Gotta see it both ways, let's run back the film. Only keep it real, player, tell me how you feel. Knowledge is the key to the game of the skills. Champions of the world, highlights on the field. Ball in the air, make the world go round. Head in the game, never let it out of bounds. Stand for the truth, otherwise take a knee. Made it to the league, now we gotta take the lead.
Sports Now, I'm Ahmad.
Must be two sides.
What's going on, beautiful people? Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Must Be Two Sides podcast. Mycole here with my boy Ahmad, and we are on our 5th episode, man, and we got a great one for you today. Ain't that right, Ahmad?
Yeah, you know, we made it to episode 5. What a blessing.
Man, and y'all subscribing, y'all tuning in, and the support is very much appreciated, man. So let's go ahead and tap right in, man, and kind of something that plays off our last episode that's going on right now. The quarterback out of Tennessee has decided to do the first hold-in ever in college football, man. Like, it's getting serious. It goes back to what I said, man. It's no longer amateur sports. This is pro athletics here, man. And what do you think about how Tennessee decided to let him walk instead of giving him what he wanted?
Yeah, so the quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, one allegedly, apparently, you know, like I can't speak on the specifics of the amount of money that he was making because I haven't looked it up, and I saw that it was around $2 million last year or something along those lines, but he wanted to up it to $4 million this year, and it's just like, how much is enough? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then there are reports coming out that apparently him and some other players that were playing in the college football playoffs last year had their agents go to the universities and demand more money because apparently they had only signed contracts for the regular season and maybe one additional game and the conference championship. And now you're talking about extended games for the playoff and things like that. And then, you know, Iamaleava goes out in that playoff game and just lays an egg and doesn't even perform well. So it's just one, amateurism is gone, like you just said, but it's also trash because it's setting the precedent of a bad precedent of what to do when you don't get your way or just being too greedy. I feel like you had a good situation. You're getting $2 million to play ball in college, probably don't even have to go to class. And then you're still going to have a chance to go be a multimillionaire in a year and a half in the National Football League. And now you maybe ruin that chance of getting drafted because who's going to want to deal with you like after what you displayed in college? So I think NIL is something we talked about last episode. Is something we probably go talk about all summer long and just all season long because I'm sure it's only going to get worse. But I do like what the head coach did at Tennessee by letting him walk. And, you know, a lot of the college coaches that banded together and said, look, we not having hold-in players in college. Like, you want to do that, then we can play get out. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy.
Yeah, man. I think it's a classic case of what we were talking about last time, just pocket watching. He saw what Carson Beck was able to get out there, Miami, and he's like, man, I want that too. I deserve that too. Hold up, let me go to these coaches and restructure, renegotiate.
Right,
brother. It ain't working like that, man. The grass ain't always greener, man. You gotta really focus on what you got already, and lock in and earn yourself that more extra money, man. And obviously, Tennessee didn't feel like he was worth that amount of money. Otherwise, they would have kept him in. He would have got it, man. So we'll see what decisions he makes moving forward. I see it's a lot of teams vying for him to pull up and come show out for them. So we'll see how he does, man.
It's always a thirsty team out there that's desperate, willing to pay whatever to get whoever. But then you look at a situation like if you're Iamaleava and you're going there and you're like, all right, are the wide receivers as good? Is the coordinator is good? Is the running backs is good? Is the offensive line good? All right, what if I'm going to a situation where it's not the SEC anymore and the team isn't good? Now my draft stock, tanks. It's like they're not even thinking about that right now because of greed and all they're seeing is dollar signs. And honestly, Cole, I blame that a lot on the parents. Like at some point, like you got to tell your son, like, are you in school to play ball and get an education, or are you going to college to make money? Which one is it? Like, it can't be both. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it has to be like, all right, while I'm in college, I'm going to get this bag, but I'm here to get my degree, further my skills on the playing field. or am I here to just get money? You know, and I think that falls back on the parenting, like, and not being hard on your kid, or and this climate in society now where it's just like give to kids, and very little is earned. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that kids now, are spoon fed more than back in the day. And these kids are just so used to having everything right in front of them that they aren't used to adversity or anything. That's why you see so many players in the transfer portal and seeking this and NIL and pocket watching, like you said, because that's all they've grown up accustomed to, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, man, definitely, and I feel like we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth, because last time on the show we were talking about how we can't fault these kids for going to get their bread, man. And if it's out there, if some team is willing to give him this, if some school is willing to give him this $4 million and he can go get it, I'm not gonna fault him for doing that. Now it comes down to a situation where you got to go perform, because you got this in your history. And if NFL teams are doing their research, they're going to these coaches at Tennessee and seeing what was the issue here, why y'all couldn't come to some type of compromise, and why does this player end up being a problem to where he had to leave the school in this type of situation. So
Right.
the only thing that will basically cover up those type of things in the NFL's eyes and GM's eyes is going out there and performing at your next school. So
Right.
if this guy can get out there and basically write his own story, it'll all be worth it.
I think they need contracts with this stuff, man. Kind of like y'all. Because it's like y'all, I mean, you do see certain players do it where they sign a contract and 3 years later they're holding out because XYZ got paid. And it's like, well, I'm the best and I need to be up, up the ante for me. I need to be paid a little bit more too. But it's like, at what point do you make these guys just honor their initial commitment? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you committed to this team for one season for this dollar amount. Cool. Let's get to it. Next season, you don't go from 2.5 million to 4 million if you ain't won no national championship, you wasn't a Heisman front runner, you weren't any of these type of things, you weren't an All-American. It's like, let's cool your horses a little bit. Like, you good, don't get me wrong, you good, but like, come on now, like let's be real. But like on the other side of it, it's like, you happy the kid is able to get a bag. But I think kind of what we did say last episode, not all money is good money. You know what I'm saying? And just because a school is willing to pay you $5 million, that's great. But what is that $5 million now this year going to do for you down the road when an NFL team is calling your name? Because say, for instance, he stays at Tennessee, he performs this season, takes them back to the college football playoff, possibly gets to the national championship game. You're talking about his draft stock rising tremendously, being a first round type quarterback, getting $13-14 million guaranteed, over the next 3 years, and then still having a chance to earn multiple million more. Or we're just going to be greedy and go chase this extra, $1.5 million for 1 year. You know what I'm saying? You see it like that?
Yeah, man. I understand what you're saying, but I feel like we got to be a little careful, man, because blaming these athletes and looking down on them for making these type of moves, because if we really dig deep and understand like why the college landscape is like that, it's because athletes were getting exploited for years and years and years. So now these athletes are trying to flip the script on these people and really go get that money that they deserve. And
Thanks.
you have to fault the organization, the NCAA organization as a whole, as to why that the college landscape looks like this. And it's disappointing, man. But we just got to be a little more careful just looking down upon these athletes for making these type of decisions, when it was not too long ago where guys like me, guys like a bunch of guys that I know really did deserve the money, but the NCAA was keeping it all for themselves.
Okay, let me ask you this though. Is there ever a point where self-accountability comes into play where you could say a player is being too greedy or a player is non-committal? Like, because at the end of the day, like, this is not tennis or track and field. Like, this is a team sport. You got 84 other brothers on scholarship laying it on the line for you. So it's like, yes, you should go get your bag. But at one point, is it like, dang, you letting down your bros?
Yeah, man, that's a hard line to toe, honestly. Between somebody trying to get their money and this is a brotherhood, this is a family. I feel like honestly, college football was kind of structured that way where, okay, this is a whole family. Your coach is like your father figure, and all your teammates are your brothers. And the NFL was more of a business, but it shifted. They changed college football to a business. So we live in a capitalism society. So whatever we got to do to go get that money, that's how the world works. That's how our world works. And it's hard to really just fault these kids for just playing the game that's been put in front of them.
And that's why I think it just NIL just needs a little bit more structure, maybe a salary cap. I mean, because it is, like you're talking about some universities that just have lump sums of millions of dollars to pour into one specific team, whereas another university has $20 million to divide between like 6 teams. So it is really crazy. It's the wild, wild west right now in college athletics. But like I said, I think a lot of that money in the hands of young people, like we talked about in the last episode, and how they're not ready for it, leads to a lot of bad decisions. And I think when you look at a lot of incidents involving college athletes nowadays, getting a lot of speeding tickets, like getting pulled over for reckless driving, like doing a lot of silly, irresponsible things where you're like, if they didn't have access to this money and these fast cars and these Hellcats and SRTs, maybe they wouldn't be getting in trouble and doing all this other crazy stuff. Like, so that's kind of where I'm coming from, like on the self accountability, the parents at home, like the people that are raising these young men and women. Like, I still think they have to take some ownership in all of this. Like, all right, it is okay for my son or daughter to go bag chase and go get this bread, but they also still have to be a respectable human being and carry themselves with class. And I think sometimes when you mix in a lot of money and a young person, they kind of don't care about anything. And that's when you see a lot of the negative stories.
Man, and that kind of just leads us right into the next topic, man. Just the whole tragedy with Kyron Lacy, man, and condolences go out to his family and friends, and rest in peace to that brother, man. Gone too soon for sure. He was dealing with a whole bunch of things in his life, and just the thing that was in the media the most, like you said, he was out driving and allegedly led to a crash that ended with somebody being deceased. And just dealing with all that type of stuff, he is said to have taken his own life after a police chase, after a dispute with a family member just so recently, man. And it's so sad to hear these type of stories. And it goes with what you said, man. Just how responsible are these young adults to be able to get all this money? Are they going to use it in the right way? Is it going to go to their heads? Is there some way that we can teach these adults, these young adults, how to use this money correctly to really further their lives and really further their quality of life, man? It just sucks to hear that type of story, man.
Yeah, honestly, I woke the other day, I'm on Instagram and I just happened to click on Justin Jefferson's story and I saw the post for Kyron Lacy, like a in memory post. And I was, what? I'm like, not Kyron Lacy that was, about to go to the NFL this year. And I think for him, man, what he did was he committed a mistake, like he left the scene of a crime. He should have stopped. He should have just stayed there. I know his lawyer came out and said, he didn't understand the severity of it and things like that. But, just imagine how things would be, like had he just stayed there. And it's really unfortunate, that a man died and lost his life. And then, he had to live kind of with that burden of getting arrested, having a bond out of jail. And then, just seeing his draft stock tank, going from a top 6 wide receiver prospect to not in the top 10 to, possibly would have been a first-round draft pick, second-round draft pick, to not hearing his name called because of that one mistake. And it really sucks because, like, we say all the time, we call just to check in, see how each other's doing, do a mental health check-in and whatnot. And it's just like you just kind of wish that Lacy would have maybe been more open with those around him, because you look at like Malik Neighbors, you look at Jane Daniels, you look at everyone that supported him that was around him and how they rode for him. And you could just tell like this blindsided everybody, his father and the post that they put out. And it's just like, you just wish that he would have talked to somebody, about this, because that mistake that he did make, and yes, he was going to have to go to court for it. It wasn't the end of his life. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you don't go to the NFL, you don't get drafted, there's still a chance for you to rectify things, for you to bounce back and become a better human being. And I just hate that we didn't get to see that version of him. And I do think that a lot of the people on social media were cruel. And I think we talked about that in episodes where maybe he was reading too many comments, because when you look at the posts like about the original accident, you look at the comments after, his apparent suicide, and it's not friendly. And I know y'all got to deal with a lot of stuff like that, far more than we do with some journalists, local journalists. But you just hate to see a life gone like that, man, over a mistake. That I'm sure if he could go back in time, he would have stayed there, and probably wouldn't have all this stuff now.
Definitely, man. And hindsight being 2020, man, we feel for that brother. It's kind of another side to the story as well. His lawyer is now coming out and saying how some of these investigations were a little predatory, went over the top. He believed that his client was going to be set free of all charges, and that just the negative media attention that came from this, and just kind of his persona, maybe some of his antics on the field, and how people treated that and how people looked at that, may have been somewhat of a contribution to why he did what he did. And I just feel like that's kind of crazy to think about, just how media can lead to such negativity that a person would want to take their own life. I'm not saying that is exactly what happened in this situation, but
right. I'm sure there's
to think that's even a possibility is crazy. How much power that we have on our platform, and that national media in general has, and definitely social media, like you said.
Yeah, and I think it also goes to how, like we talked about in this episode, like how athletes carry themselves. Like, you got to be responsible, and I think John Moran is a perfect example of that. Like, living in Memphis, you probably around some people you shouldn't be hanging around. You get this new identity with those type of people, and then you start making mistakes. And he went from, flashing guns and doing all this stuff to getting suspended, then getting hurt last year, to where Ja was really the face of the league at one point, like his first 2 seasons there. Like, everyone was talking about him being the next superstar. And then those gun instances was just the beginning of I won't say the end of his popularity, but like him being a face of the league is probably no more. Like, unless he just goes to win like 4 championships in a row or something like that. But like, Adam Silver and these fans will never allow him to be the face because of his antics. And you look at this year, and it's like you starting out with, the guns, obsession that he has. And then now it's like the grenade, and he's like, oh, that's actually not a grenade. That's just, people's words, and I'm throwing it out there and blocking it out. It's just like, come on now, bro. Like, you have to have a little bit more awareness about what you're doing on the court. Like, you're a professional athlete, like, what they're going to do. And so, like, when you bring up Kyron Lacey, his antics, and the media, and how, sometimes, they can create the narratives and things like that. I just think it all goes back to, like, if you got clips of a guy doing celebrations with guns, whatever, and then they get in trouble, you think the media not going to put 2 and 2 together and be like, this is a character issue? Like, I'm not saying that's right. Like, I'm not saying I would do that, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes, like, you can only go with what you're given. Like, we don't know the athlete, outside of what we're allowed to see on the playing field or the playing court. And so I just think sometimes that's what it goes back to. Like, how you carry yourself matters. How you celebrate matters. Like, because if you don't want negative articles, you don't want negative opinions, don't give people an opportunity to write those things. Kind of like you alluded about LeBron James, like his 20+ year NBA career. How many negative stories have we heard about LeBron James? How many stories outside of the Stephen A. Smith debacle where he approached him courtside have we seen something happen with LeBron James where we're like, wow, LeBron was tripping? Like, he's never gave media that opportunity to make him out to be a bad person off the court.
Yeah, I get that, man. And I think it's kind of like a catch-22, just the culture we live in and how glorified guns and weapons are. We live in a society where the more gangster a rapper is, the more he talks about guns, the more he talks about killing, the more money he's gonna make. And
Which is wild.
that's what's getting pushed the hardest out on the airways. Um, and then when you talk about the right to bear arms and how up in an uproar people get over that, and at the same time they come at a kid that grew up in that type of environment and just expressing himself on the field after an emotional play. So it's you do have to very much watch how you carry yourself as an athlete, because like I said prior, everything is a game. Even after you leave the field, you have to play the game the correct way in order to get to the next level.
And it's yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna come back.
Yeah, it's like I love what you just said about it's always a game, because like my thing is when you see people do like the celebrations now where they raise up their shirt, kind of insinuating they got that thing tucked, and it's like, all right, what happens when you get pulled over with that thing on you, and then it becomes a media report? So and so arrested. He was caught with a firearm in his car. Blah 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 blah. The first video clip they go pull. You doing that video celebration with your teammate, the handshake where you doing this. And it's like, it's a crazy obsession with our culture nowadays. And it's like, I get it. A lot of the kids from the inner city, the black kids especially, grow up in some of those environments where that is just the norm, unfortunately. Like that is just a way of life for some of these people, and they're trying to get out. And I think sometimes, like you said, that toughness, credibility, like don't mess with me, like, don't try me. Like I think that just gets lost on people nowadays, where they want that mantra, like, I'm tough, don't try me. I got people, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, you don't have to roll like that. Like back in the day, I felt like pro athletes were trying to escape that, like when you came from stuff like that, you were trying to remove yourself and get away from that. Whereas I feel like a lot of young athletes nowadays are trying to associate themselves with that. That's like you see young guys walking around with ski mask on. Like it's 80 degrees. You got a Nike Tech hoodie on and a mask on. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I think, man, just to sum it all up, it's just very important that if you're having any type of trouble, any type of depressive thoughts, man, just find somebody that you can lean on, man. Your life is way more valuable than those emotions that you're feeling in that moment, or the emotions that may have lasted a while. There's people that love you. There's people that want to see you grow into somebody that's going to do great things in this world, man. And we hate seeing stories like this where guys who had such a promising life ahead of them are gone too soon. And we just, like I said, prayers with the family, prayers with his friends. And we hope that going forward, other guys can learn from this type of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing, that people learn from this and understand that mistakes will be made in life. It's okay to make mistakes. And, we can all turn over a new leaf after we make a mistake. And we were robbed of being able to see Kyron Lacy turn over his new leaf and become a better person for this incident that took place, and, that he was going to recover from. So sucks to see. Heart goes out to all his former teammates, his family, and everyone that's impacted by this, and especially the guy who lost his life in that car accident and their family. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, losing a father and having to go through everything they've had to gone through. Like, it's two sides to every story for sure. While a lot of people are grieving with Lacy, the more notable guy, involved in that accident, there was another side to it. And, so you just prayers for both sides. You hate to see that happen. And hopefully, a lot of athletes can learn from this and just learn that, just face those mistakes head on, don't run from anything, and use your resources around you, because there are a ton of people who love you and will always be there for you. So lastly, now we kind of transition from a little heavier topic to a little bit more of a lighter topic now, something that I think is funny, that I think is an ever I won't say never-ending topic is the better word to use for it. This is something that Mycole and I joke about all the time, but it's former athletes jumping straight to ESPN or national networks without, as we like to say in local media, proper training or the right resume. And Marcus Morris, we're going to throw this clip in there because y'all got to hear this. He's on First Take with Stephen A. Smith and Shanae. I don't want to say her last name because I don't know how to pronounce it and I don't want to disrespect her, but she's a basketball analyst on there. Shanae, she's really good. But basically, Marcus Morris is describing the Memphis Grizzlies and Ja Morant, and he goes, I really like these YNs.
I think it will be a really tough game. I really like the Grizzlies. Like the YNs, they really come into play, right? Like they're gonna be excited. They're gonna be ready to go.
And it's just like one is just like, all right,
man.
For people who don't know what YNs mean, that means young Negroes, basically, the filter version. And it's just like, bro, you know how many black people have come before you, fought tooth and nail to get to where they wanted to be on a national network or something like that, or just local journalists that like had to go through all the racism, all the double standards, you know, like the black person not being in and whatnot, and you know, the industry being dominated by white men back in the day. Like it took us so long to have a seat at the table and to be able to be who we are, showcase our personality. Shout out to Stuart Scott, who really made it cool, like, you know, to showcase your flavor on national TV, just for an athlete, current athlete, to get up there and be like, yeah, these YNs. It's like, bro, what are we doing, man? Like, you shouldn't be on TV anyway. I get if you just coming on to be like a guest analyst or whatnot, but like, bro, like you got to have some common sense. Like that's like ESPN having Paul Pierce as an analyst, and then he goes on live and got strippers and is smoking weed, and he like, what I do? It was my off day. It's like you said, it's a game within the game. Like just because I'm off TV, don't mean I can be, you know, what I want to be in front of a camera. Like you got to always keep in mind like that, you know, like, I don't know. I just think there's a standard in journalism, and I think that standard is decreasing due to shows like First Take and a lot of the people that they bring on and a lot of the guests. Because sometimes you listen to these former athletes and they can't even put together an intellectual sentence. It's like, what are they saying right now?
No, man, I understand your gripe. I understand how hard that, you know, guys in your position have to work to get to a spot like that was just, you know, kind of given to Marcus Morris. I mean, well, we don't know what kind of work he put in before this to get to this position, but you know, when you go on there and you say terms like this, it kind of discredits you a little bit for sure. And hopefully somebody at Disney isn't looking it up right now because we might not see him no more.
I'm pretty sure they're looking it up and like, did he really say that on TV? Like what? Yeah, that's going to be a meeting with Stephen A. Smith for sure.
He said it for sure. But I want to challenge you in the fact that you said that these things are all about ratings. You know, it's all about viewership. It's all about what the audience wants to see. And the audience would much rather listen to one of these former players talk, whether they going to be good or not. They still going to turn in to see if they're good or not. And that's going to bring the viewers in, as opposed to maybe some new guy that we don't really know that well. You know, when Stephen A goes off of First Take, it's First Take getting turned off. Honestly, Stephen A is the main attraction on First Take. So any other new media member that we not just too familiar with, we might turn in for a little bit, but after a while, we not hearing Stephen A and his controversy, so we're gonna turn it off. But but once you put an athlete on there and he gets to tap into some of his stories, people want to hear that. People want to understand what the insight is like for somebody that's actually doing it, somebody that actually has experience, somebody that knows some of the players that he's talking about personally and can really speak to some of those things that certain guys and media reporters wouldn't be able to get down to. And I feel like it's not going nowhere with the podcast climate. You know, guys they may feel a little more comfortable to talk because that's what they seeing a little more. But you got to understand, going on a platform like ESPN, Disney is something completely different, and you gotta raise your bar a little bit. But like I said, this ain't going nowhere, brother. Y'all might as well get used to that.
Honestly, I've already, like, came to terms with that. Like, we joke about it all the time. That basically, like, if you were maybe 15 years ago, if you were somewhat successful, black journalist, had some notoriety to your name, you had a good chance to be on a network like that. And, to end your career on a national network. Whereas nowadays it's like, move aside, brother. Like, all right, this guy just retired from the NFL. He going through 2 months of training. Then he's slapped on here every day, 5 days a week. This is our new analyst. And it's like, one, I understand it. Because, like, part of this podcast is to tap into stories that people don't always get a chance to hear. Like, when you're watching the local news and things like that, which is what I appreciate. But I think it's also become oversaturated with former athletes and their opinions. And I think a lot of former athletes have disgruntled opinions, especially when you're talking about today's game and the money that these guys are making. Like, I think there's a lot of jealousy. I think there's a lot of envy with athletes that come on television nowadays and criticize the game. And, y'all hate seeing former players get on there and be saying all these things because they like, y'all, I know y'all talk about it in the locker room, where it'd be like, what are they talking? They know better than to say that. Like, what do they mean? Like, blah, blah, blah. So I think sometimes, one, we lose sight of the journalism industry. Like, First Take is not a journalism show. As I've said it before, First Take is more entertainment. But I also think, like, the stories that y'all want to see, the human side, the sides talking about the good that you're doing in the community, like all that stuff, you don't get that without local journalism, or when the national media is in town for a big game and they want to highlight what you're doing. Like, you don't get those type of stories with former athletes. What you get with former athletes is just the opinions on the game, and that's it. So it's just like, you get takes, you get breakdowns, that's it. So it's like, they go talk about you when you're doing good, they go talk about you when you're doing bad. But then that's when the athletes be like, I am a person. Like, there is more to me than just the game that I play. And I feel like that's y'all gripe with media. It's like, they don't highlight y'all in a positive way all the time. It's sometimes negative. And I think a lot of those negative narratives begin with former players.
I feel like that's generalizing a little bit and a little bit of discrediting some of these athletes and their takes, because they're coming from a place of knowledge, of real understanding and real, X's and O's understanding. So for you to just diminish it as, that's all you get is kind of missing something for me. Honestly, you're right about how a lot of these guys go on and they're disgruntled about how their careers may have went, and they may take it out on the players that's playing today a little bit. And I feel like some of that is just the field that they're stepping into and how it's been run for so long already. So they're stepping into it, and they're realizing, for me to stay on TV, I got to make some of these hot takes. I got to say something that's going to make them want to keep me around.
But ain't that the problem with our society, is trying to do what's trending instead of doing what's right?
I mean, we can talk about the problems of our society all day if that's what we want to do, but it's kind of a circle talk, really. But like I said, all you can do is play the hand that you're dealt, and we're all dealt this type of society. We're all dealt with what's going on in the world right now, and we have to figure out how to make it work for us in the best way possible. So when these athletes go on TV, opportunity that they're presented because of the work that they put in the game. It's not the same work that you put in your field, that you feel like that's the top of your field, and guys are moving you out the way. I understand how that can be frustrating, for sure, because you obviously have way more years of experience at doing what they're doing. But at the same time, it's what the people want.
It is. And look, I'm not sitting here saying that some athletes don't deserve jobs. Like, I want to clear the record right there. Like, not every former athlete or athlete that joins ESPN First Take or NFL Network, whatever the case may be, like, there are some really good athletes on there, like Dan Orlovsky, Ryan Clark, Swagoo, like those guys, like you really learn ball from. Like Brian Baldinger is one of my favorite follows on social media. The way he breaks down the game, you know, it's not like all this dramatics and flares and takes. Like you're getting real ball knowledge, like, you know, on like NFL Live, NBA Live, things like that. I wouldn't even say NBA Live. I think that's more opinions compared to NFL Live. NFL Live is really giving you a lot of ball mixed with good media personalities with Mina Kimes, Laura Rutledge, and all of them. So I think there's a difference in a standard when it comes to like good athletes on TV and bad athletes on TV. And I think athletes deserve a right because they're tapping into stories that we don't know about that we can't highlight. But I also think that what gets diminished or discredited sometimes for journalists, for that matter, is a lot of athletes like to say, well, y'all didn't play the game at the highest level, so you can't talk about this better than I can. And I think sometimes that's not all the way factual, because you sometimes have head coaches in the National Football League, National Basketball Association, MLB, whatever the case may be, where they never played a lick of that sport, but they actually may be really, really good, or they never played in the pros, but they're actually a great coach. And so you could take coaching and credit, you know, from a guy like that inside your clubhouse. And it's like, you know, the same way that a coach who didn't play in the sport can work his way up and become a head coach, I think it's also true to say that a journalist who didn't play a sport but has covered it for 20 to 25 years, been in numerous locker rooms, can also have that same knowledgeable output when breaking down a game and breaking down what it takes to win, etc. Just because they didn't play doesn't mean that they don't know the game and can cover it extensively. Now, there are certain reporters that didn't play the game, that don't understand it, that think they know it, and they don't. But I just think sometimes athletes tend to discredit journalists and their knowledge of said sport, you know, just because they didn't play it at a pro level.
Definitely, man. I give y'all that for sure, that somebody could definitely study the game for years and years and be able to understand it and give it an eloquent take on it for sure. But it's kind of different than having those exact experiences and being able to draw back to these experiences and bring the audience in with your storytelling.
Right.
So it's two different things. They both can work. They both can work at a high level, and it just depends on the person and what type of preparation they did before they went on there, and how they're conducting themselves when they go on there.
Yeah, and I honestly think like guys like Ryan Clark that put in the work while they were playing, being an intern at a former local news station and like doing things the right way, you kind of tend to see those athletes take off a little bit more because they understand the magnitude of the level that they're on and the platform that they have and how they can capitalize off that. Because I'll just tell you this, a lot of athletes can get on TV and tell you a locker room story or tell you what they think should happen. But boy, let me tell you, if they had to read off that teleprompter and host an actual show, they'd be looking like a deer in headlights. Because to actually call a highlight while reading a script, while simultaneously looking at the highlight to make sure you're at that exact moment in your script or you're reading the same play that's on air, man, that's a skill. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that. And I just, to round out this conversation, I think we need to have that healthy balance still. And I think we're losing that balance between a journalist and an analyst. And I think we need both because, like you said, there's stories that are untapped that we need to tap into about what goes into being a champion, locker rooms, etc., from that former athlete. But like you said, it's all about storytelling. And we need that journalist to help tell that story, to help give that guy the platform to go down memory lane and share what occurred. And so I just think that it's a fine line nowadays. And, it's a line that gets crossed a little bit. And I think a lot of people don't really care about journalism. They just care about that next viral moment, which I don't think is sustainable long term. Just when you're talking about like the mental psyche of these athletes, and all that stuff. They don't want to hear negative stuff. Sometimes they just want to hear straight down the line, neutral takes. And
well, look, man. Hey, when I go on First Take and I get my viral moment, don't be hating for it.
Hey, but what have I told you though? What have I told you in our conversations over the years?
What you say?
You need to be trying to get on TV. It's much easier for you to get to a national network than it is for a guy like me. Like, you need to capitalize on your platform that you have. Go to a network or go to ESPN, network with one of these guys on the sideline while you're playing, and then make that transition to national TV where you can continue getting, a 7-figure check a year to just talk ball. I have told you that though, haven't I?
Well, you would be correct because I do have a face for TV, brother, and that's why I'm in front of the camera right now, man. I'm practicing.
He lacks no self
gearing up,
guys. No.
I'm gearing up for my big debut. So y'all be on the lookout for that, man. And in the meantime, keep tuning in, man. We gonna,
I'd be your biggest supporter if you got there. And honestly, you probably would be the end that I need. Like, what we always say in this world, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And
Definitely.
Sometimes you don't get to places like that unless you know somebody. So if you ever did go to ESPN, best believe I'm picking up that phone like, hey, who's the executive I need to be talking to get there? Like, you feel me? Like, throw me a bone too. So
package deal, baby. Come on.
You feel me? Like, bring this podcast with us. You feel me? We gonna bring this to ESPN and give us a space. So I think that's a good place to end for this week. I think we covered a lot, but obviously I feel like NIL and the journalists takes, all that stuff will start to pick up even more, because we're about to enter a really brutal stretch for sports where the NBA will be coming to an end. The NFL won't be here, and we'll be stuck with the MLB and golf. And so there's going to be a lot of takes and a lot of opinions and a lot of narratives created before the NFL season kicks off, before the NBA, off season begins and whatnot. So we're going to circle the block on these topics for sure, NIL and all the journalists and former athlete stuff. But Cole, that being said, I got to ask you before we end this podcast, do you think you could go in front of a camera right now, if given 1 month of training, and be a good TV sports anchor? Not an analyst where you just give takes, an anchor where you have to write and produce. Do you think you could do that with 1 month of training?
You're talking to a man with supreme confidence, brother. I believe 100% that I could do it. 1 month of training. Let's get to it, brother. I'm gonna go through a mod boot camp, media boot camp. So hey, we gonna come out better at the other side, man.
It's funny that you say that, talking about supreme confidence, because I was actually just telling somebody a story about you the other day and just like how gifted you always were. And I was like, because they were like, it's so crazy. I was doing a story about this guy who played basketball his entire life. And then his senior year, somebody told him to go out for track. So he just unknowingly went out there, didn't know nothing about it, and started jumping, ended up winning state in the triple jump or a long jump or something like that. And then ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Minnesota to triple jump. And I was like, it's pretty remarkable, because now he's one of the best in the NCAA and really hasn't even done that sport for 3 years. And I was like, I got a buddy named Mycole. I was like, never played volleyball a day in his life. Goes out for our boys volleyball team in high school, and y'all were like state runner-ups or something like that. And then literally our senior track season, Cole had to have shoulder surgery or whatever. So literally out the entire track season. He came out for like the beginning, and I'll never forget, he did like some races and stuff with us and whatnot. And our trainer walked out there and was like, no, like you just had surgery. Like, it's not happening. He couldn't do it. Dude comes out the last 5 weeks of the season and places top 10 in state in the throwing event. It's like, how, bro? Like, how, bro?
Look, man, I just got to thank the man above. I am blessed, brother. And there's nothing much more to say about that, man. Hey, thank you, Lord.
Shout out to the man above for Cole's athletic talents. All right. And we appreciate y'all for tuning in to episode 5 of the Must Be Two Sides podcast. Make sure y'all follow, like, subscribe, tell a friend, tell them to subscribe, and then we'll keep dishing out the content y'all like to see. So until then, we'll see y'all next week for the next episode.
Just like that.
Must be two sides.